Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to Hard Wig Soft Life, the podcast. I want to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by Black Stock Footage. Black Stock Footage is a stock video platform and production agency that's all about real, intentional Black representation. If you're a creator or brand looking for visuals that actually reflect our people, our energy, and our stories, this is it. They've got a beautiful library of high quality clips, and they're building something that really centers us. Use my code SOFTLIFE10 for 10% off a year subscription. And big thanks to Black Stock Footage for supporting Hard Wig Soft Life and showing love to creators like me. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Hard Wig Soft Life, the podcast. It's your girl, Melissa L. Atkinson, and I am stoked because the person that I have on my couch, if you don't know who she is, like, I don't know what rock you're living under, but this is Tracey Baker Simmons, and she is Emmy-nominated executive producer, pioneer in the reality TV show world, making the way and paving the way for all Black women behind her. This is Tracey Baker Simmons, and this is our episode. Hi, Tracey.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'm so excited to have you here. I know I met you a few years ago in Atlanta, back when my actual wig was hard. And so now we are here living the soft life.
Yes, I like
Some
it.
questions.
Good on you.
I'm trying to be like you, go, Hi. So I know I gave you a mouthful of an introduction, but if you were to give your elevator pitch or your intro to everyone for you,
Okay.
what are you telling people?
Ooh, well, I would definitely say that I am a pioneer in the reality space and the creator of Being Bobby Brown. And then definitely like all things culture, like about telling great stories that are rooted in our culture, centered around real people in the space. And I feel like in this next overall iteration, it's about my legacy will be like teaching people how to watch this thing called television, and just understanding that it influences culture, and hopefully help the next generation to show up with more of a conscience of what's happening as they're creating and what the images are that they're putting on the screen. Like, I love Sinners because it was a person who mined the story of what it would be telling to the audience while still entertaining.
So I haven't seen it yet. That is my goal when I get back home, is to watch Sinners. But I heard that it was a work of art and that there were so many different, I don't want to say subliminals, but there were just certain things that you could really pick up on in how I guess I haven't seen it yet, so I can't really say much about it, but I've just heard a lot about it, so I'm very excited. And I know that we're probably going to tap into some other things that you're watching. I know you post it on Instagram a lot. And so it's funny because I only really watch documentaries or reality shows. I'm never in the fictional world, so I'm gonna have to check out anything that you recommend.
Oh, thank you. No, it's interesting because I just started that part. I do these did you know, and I want to like drop these nuggets about information in the industry.
Right.
And then I started to be like, okay, because a lot of times I'll meet people and they're like, I have an idea for a show, and I'm like, oh, okay, what do you watch on television? And people used to love to say, I don't watch TV, and I would be like, well, how are you going to make TV if you don't watch TV?
Right.
Because you're not having anything to compare your idea with. You're not having anything to compare to what's happening in the space and how it's being shaped. And so now I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to start sharing what I'm watching and give it a little bit of commentary in the caption about why I want to watch it, or what's it doing, or how it's telling story. From a reality perspective, like, I don't know if you know, because it's like even from like the draft lately, the NBA finals, like I love sports because it is the original reality television, Everything is a story. It's like, who is this person? What's their struggle? Why are they there? And even I used that when I met Bobby Brown, I said, do you know why football players make less money than basketball players? And he was like, no. And I was like, marketing. You can't see their face. And you can see these 5, 6 guys' face, so you have a connection.
Right.
So the idea is to remove the helmet, the veil, break what we call the fourth wall, and allow individuals into your space meaning I'm in your living room. I feel like I'm a part of your conversation. I get to know you, and this connection is what builds this world where you get an authority or you basically are influencing. And the people who make TV know that for sure. And they've known that for years, and they've used that to influence culture. So now we, as people of color, as we're stepping into those spaces, we need to be a bit more mindful of that. And I think that's where I hope to see us being able to do, like taking that power to be like, I'm going to be mindful.
Right.
Because every image makes an impression, you know?
Yes.
I was on a film for Hallmark, Sugar Plum Twist, and it was a certain thing that they said, it's not going to be a big deal. It's only going to be on screen for a minute and a half. And I said, that's interesting. So people pay millions of dollars for a 30-second commercial. And you're going to tell me that an image that lands on a screen in a movie for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, or 3 minutes is not going to make an impression? That's not even how y'all sell media.
Right.
Impossible. It absolutely will make an impression.
Yeah.
So we need to be mindful. And, we had to make a huge adjustment just by me saying that. And happy that I said it. I haven't made another movie with them yet, and maybe they're like, oh, girl, she's too woke. Could be it.
They use that word now. But
What, woke?
yes, because I just feel like it was something that we had for us. There's like, that was a word that we used, and now it's made a mockery.
Yeah.
Out of.
Well, they weaponized.
Correct.
Exactly. But I do feel like we have to fight back on that and say, yes, I'm woke. I think we need to go back to being like, no, stay woke. And you can be pissed off about it. And you cannot want to be, and why wouldn't you want to deal with me because I'm woke,
It's true.
Yeah, like I say that to people sometimes when I'm interviewing. I'll say, do you want my face or my voice? Because black face could just check off a box.
Right.
But the voice is something different.
I want to know, were you always this direct and this passionate? I admire it. But I know, like, were you from the jump, like when you first started in this industry, did you always feel that confidence in your voice?
I think I grew up that way.
Okay.
It's funny because a white director asked me that. He said, when did you find your voice? I was like, find? I showed up with this. This is all I had, and interestingly enough, raised by not a single parent. My mother was married to my stepfather, and that's a whole nother cycle of trauma. But not my current stepfather, he's a sweet guy, the one before him.
Okay.
So, but my grandmother and my mother were very, I wouldn't say they were militant, but they were very pro-Black.
Okay.
However, I went to school, 5 people in my Black people in the graduating class.
Wow.
So I had this level of confusion with them. I would keep saying, why do you want me to be around these people if you're telling me all these things? And they would say, because that's the world.
Okay.
So you have to be in it and then be able to navigate it.
Yes.
So then everything that they were teaching me, I was basically saying it at school to my friends. And it's funny, like in the world of social media and the political climate, I remember the first time Donald Trump was running for president, I went home to Tennessee. I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yes.
And most of my friends didn't want to hook up with me, as they normally would. And one of my friends, she said, but I said, okay, if y'all don't want to come and have lunch with Tracey, that's fine. So then I said to her, I was like, am I so different? Because I could, it was a weird thing. I couldn't remember myself.
Right.
Like, how was I? To the point that now I'm feel this big voice, right? And she said, no, you were. Remember, you wouldn't let us choose Martin Luther King or Malcolm X for Black History Month. You said you need to do some research and find some more Black people that's done something. Everybody got to pick somebody else. I said, oh, okay. And she said, then you made us eat pickles and Kool-Aid because you was like, this is what people do in the hood, and y'all need to have some experience. I said, oh. She was like, so no one's surprised by you, just so you understand.
Okay.
She was like, it's just everyone is like, okay, we're older now. We don't have to take that.
I am screaming in turn. They probably thought you were going to come with more pickles. But I ask about, the finding your voice because I feel like I'm finding mine,
Mhm.
And so I'm always curious about Black women navigating in a space where there's not many of us that look like us. And okay, were you always like this? Or did your progression in your career perhaps harden you a little bit to like,
Yeah.
no, I'm going to speak up because I didn't before and this is
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah.
So I think that's where my curiosity lies with that. You are a pioneer. So I need to know, like, how did you even come up with, okay, we're gonna make this reality show about Bobby Brown? There was no blueprint when you did any of this. So did it come from God? Like, wait,
The news, God, yes, a few things. Um, this is what Pat. It's interesting because I swear to God, I'm going to write this book. Can't even tell you yeah,
okay.
about divine positioning. It's so interesting because I was at a very low point in my life when I moved. So I lived in Atlanta. I graduated from college from Memphis, moved to Atlanta because that was my dream. I was going to be the mayor of Atlanta. You better be careful. I might still go back and I might run the block on that one. So don't count me out just yet.
No, I won't. I will. My brother lives in Atlanta. I'll make him vote for you. I'm like, you vote for Tracey.
But basically, growing up, that was a thing, Maynard Jackson, and I was like, a Black man is the mayor? What? I'm moving. I'm getting the zip code. I'm looking at the rules and regulations. I am going to be the mayor one day. This is possible. And at school though, I wanted to threaten them a little more. And it's funny because they were like, remember when you said, I'm gonna be the mayor of Atlanta and I might be the president? And we were like, what? And you were like, shut up, yes.
I love that.
And I was like, oh yeah, I remember I told y'all that. So I literally, the day I graduated, the next day I moved to Atlanta.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was like on my path. Then I got bit by the entertainment bug.
Okay.
So I lived there, was doing my thing. I started a company with some friends, and I'm giving the condensed version. I was produced music videos and commercials.
Yes, I saw.
Nice relationships with a lot of people. Worked with Organized Noise and like Rico Wade. God, that's just so my friend. Oh my God. And then I ended up moving to LA and I was still working with some of the same group of people. And we ended up having a falling out.
Okay.
And they literally took the company
Okay.
that I had created and went on off with the company. And I was like stuck in a what am I going to do now space. I remember that I went to a bookstore and a book. It was just like right there, and it was called Too Busy Not to Pray.
Okay.
And I was like,
wow,
I
that's a word.
this book, right? And started reading that book, was really trying to figure out what I was going to even do next.
Right.
Like I was frozen inside of my own body in a way. And I remember that I went to interview for a job at a studio, and now I can't even remember which studio it was. So long ago. And the guy said, I wanted to be his assistant. Okay. Because I'm like, I have this fascination with studio system, like studios, like Hollywood,
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I'll just do this, be his assistant, and someday the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And the guy said, if you become my assistant, you will never go on a set again. Like, that's not your job. And you will basically be at that desk.
Okay.
And he was like, or you can walk out this door and go be the producer that you are. You just have to go produce.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I guess I should just say no. I guess he's telling me no. Didn't even understand it.
Right.
And through a series of things, I ended up working on a show that took me to Barcelona for a bit. And and it was just like grace, grace, grace. Like I'm in the middle of Barcelona, don't speak Spanish, working with a Spanish crew, have no idea how things are going to happen. They're all looking at me like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, and it was a scripted show, never did scripted before. I'm like, and how did I get hired to be the producer of a scripted show? It had these people out here and I don't even speak Spanish, and I'm trusting the interpreter, and they kept looking at me going, what we gonna do next? And I'm like, I'm gonna pray. I don't know what y'all gonna do, because I can't even say it out loud, but I don't know what I'm doing. So long story short, we made it through the pilot. Everything was great. And the series ended up not getting picked up, but I was just like, maybe I should just go back there. Just find my way. And I went there for a bit of time.
To Barcelona?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then I came back because I had packed up myself from California at this point and migrated my things to Atlanta, like going back to Atlanta. And my son was there, and I was in Barcelona, and I found him a school and the whole 9 yards. And then when I came back, my best friend was just like, you need to, are you sure you want to do this? This is big, blah, blah, blah. And basically 9/11 happened. Like I put my son in school, like, okay, maybe let me think for a second. And then 9/11 happened. I was like, okay, there's no way I can leave the country now. Because I just felt like, oh, I don't know. Is this where war or what's happening?
Right.
So now I'm in Atlanta. And I met in the process of that, I also met my current husband.
Okay.
And I was watching the news. I was starting over. Like my friend was like, build a new company. You did it before.
Right.
You built that company. They didn't build that company. Right. Do it again. I'll support you. Maybe I'll do it with you. So you got to have those kind of friends.
For sure.
Because I kept saying, I don't know, maybe I should just do something else. And she's like, no, this is what you do. And to be honest, even my family was like, that producing thing is what you do.
Right.
You couldn't even quit if you wanted to.
Right.
And I was like, okay, fine. So we started looking for investors, and basically found through a process of meetings, and my brother, who was a finance guy, helping us to meet and stuff, got an investor who agreed to give us $500,000 to start the company and develop projects.
Okay.
Mainly, I was going to be doing scripted and movies.
Okay.
And in that process, me, the TV person, was watching the news and the Osbournes. And then I was thinking, Bobby and Whitney, they just do not care about those cameras.
No.
Those cameras just all up in their face. They're not pushing them. They're not fighting. They're just acting like they're not there.
Yeah.
And so I said, they should just do a reality show. But didn't think, like, what does that mean? Really?
Right.
Because it wasn't really a way to know what that meant.
Right.
And I was talking to our attorneys, and our attorney was like, well, if you can make that happen, you could really be on the map. And then my partner was my friend, who's still my best friend to this day. She said, well, maybe we should just try that. And I said, well, what we gonna do? You don't know this.
I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, how though?
We don't know these people. And then both of us have business degrees.
Okay.
Okay. And we were like, well, 6 degrees of separation. Yeah. Okay. 6 degrees of separation. Let's play it. Let's see if it works. And we actually called the guy who was partners with our investor.
Okay.
And said, look, we need to get in touch with Bobby Brown. And he was like, I said, I did some research. He in jail. Knowing about it at the jail. And he said, well, let me make a couple phone calls. He calls back. He goes, okay, I got you 2 phone numbers. Great. What you got? He's like, I got spiritual advisor and a lawyer. So we were like, oh, lawyer gonna want some money.
Right.
Let's talk to the spiritual advisor. Then I was thinking, you call yourself Bobby Brown, spiritual advisor. We might be able to spend something with you. Let's see what it is. See what we do here. So called the guy, gave him the pitch, and added, and you could be on the show too. Because remember, we were marketing majors. She did pharmaceutical sales. We're like, we got this. We got this.
Oh my God, the finesse is crazy. Right.
And so we met the spiritual advisor with with Bobby's brother. And
Okay.
she sent me, and this was before we had these phones that we have now. Now, we didn't have no texting and all that. We just had a little flip or something. I don't even know. And I was like, where am I going? It was like in the middle of Marietta.
GPS.
Yes, exactly. They gave you the directions. Girl. And I made it back. And through a process of conversations, we set up a breakfast with his brother.
Okay.
And his brother came to breakfast with me, fell asleep twice during the breakfast.
I'm thoroughly confused because how do you do that? He just put his head on the...
8 o'clock in the morning, he said, oh, I'm so tired.
No, I don't want to laugh because what if he had narcolepsy? But like, what?
He was tired. I don't know. But I was determined. So I just sat there and watched this man sleep. And his breakfast got cold. They took it away. He wakes up, ordered again.
No, no.
And my partner is going, what is going on? Because we don't have texting. We can't text each other. This is 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So he finally wakes up and eats a little. We go outside. I'll never forget this. It's a spring day in Atlanta, Georgia, in Alpharetta. Okay. And I'll never forget, the sun is shining. There's a breeze. And he said, whoa, this air feels good. So what you said? What did I say? Sir.
We literally just had
2 hours we've been together. I said, maybe your brother could do a reality show? And he said, oh, hell no. And then I was like, oh, no. You owe me. I said, no, you're not listening. He said, cameras in their house? Are you crazy? And I said, you at least owe me the opportunity to speak with him.
Okay.
And he said, okay. Now, I don't know how he got Bobby on the phone. I don't know. I guess they have phones in jail. I don't know how they work, but I know Bobby was in jail, and I know his brother called on the cell phone. And he said, Bobby was like, hey, what's up? Blah, blah, blah. You know, he was being himself, suave. And I said, and then I said the whole pitch about the football player versus the basketball player.
Right.
And he said, okay, I'm going to think about that. And I said, okay, cool. That's great. Awesome. We'll be in touch. How long are you in jail for?
Right.
He said a few more weeks or something. I don't know. I looked it up. I was like, let me go home and do some.
That's determination.
And so his brother called again, and he said, hey, meet me at this place. And it was like on Southwest Atlanta.
Okay.
Friends having a barbecue. Like, my brother going to call when you're here because I want to talk to you again. And so this time she went with me because she's like, girl, you just going out these places. You don't know these people. What are we doing? I was like, all right, cool. We just rolling. Let's.
Right.
And they had a lot of food. I'll never forget that. It was like so much meat and stuff. And she's a vegetarian now, but she wasn't there. But she was like, we ain't eating nothing. Oh, we not eating nothing. And I was like, it's a barbecue. And I knew his brother and I had a mutual friend.
Okay.
So his brother had remembered seeing me in California before at a barbecue at the park at my friend's birthday. So we go to this place, Bobby calls, and at that point he said, I'm getting out of jail next week. We can meet.
Nice.
And I'm like, okay, we got that. So we were like, oh, we getting closer.
Right.
Okay, we got a meeting now.
Oh my God.
Girl, do you know the news came on 2 days later?
What happened?
He got out of jail.
Okay.
But they transported him to Boston and put him back in jail.
Why? He had another warrant over there?
Yes.
No, no, Miss Tracey, no. I'm stressed.
Listen, I told the investor we might be getting close. They were like, okay. I call his brother and see Miss Tracey. My grandmother cursed like a sailor.
Okay.
So I can cuss.
Okay.
I was like, he said, calm down. This the brother. This Tommy. Tommy, me and him are so cool now. He, calm down for what? He gonna get out. When?
Right.
Dude, what? They just arrested him again? How do you get arrested and get arrested? I don't even know how to run. I don't know enough about the prison system. And he's like, it's going to be, I was like, where are you? I'm in Atlanta. Where is he? He's in Boston. What's happening? He's like, he's going to get out. I'm going to Boston. Calm down.
Okay.
Then we got to figure it out. I'm like, okay. I'm just going to pray you tell him the truth.
Right.
And I guess when he gets back, we're going to meet.
Okay.
And hopefully that's going to happen. So the next day, he got out of jail.
Okay. We're moving.
He called me. His brother got there. This Bobby, he wants to speak to you. Cool. Hey, Bobby.
My phone bestie, like.
On the flight? He said, no. I said, huh? He said, hey, okay, explain that thing to me again.
What is it with this? Nobody's listening?
I said, reality shows show you who you are.
Right.
He said, yeah, okay. So if you want to make a show with me, you need to come here now. Let's go.
Okay.
Come where?
Right. With
Boston.
who? With what? I'm confused. Like,
this was, and it wasn't even in the morning or something. It was early. And so I tell my partner, I was like, he said, we got to come now. And she's like, what? And then I said, where's your lawyer? He said, he's here. So we call our lawyer. I was like, he said, if we want to shoot with him if we want him to do the show, he'll do it right now. Can we make him sign something?
mm-hmm.
See, because I believe in getting that paperwork signed first.
I'm learning.
Yeah. And we had to fax it. It's a long time ago.
No, I've used the fax, but I am the last generation of people to use a fax. So
I said, I'm going to fax it there and you're going to sign it. And he said, okay. And then my partner was like, and then what's going to happen? And I was like, and you're going to go.
Okay.
With a camera person and an audio person. I had that much sense to know that's what we needed. And she said she never produced anything. This is my best friend who just had business. She was like, and what I said, don't worry, just keep everybody in line.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to wire money because I feel like I have to stay here to figure out all the other pieces.
Right.
And she said, okay.
So you sent her?
Yes, we got online, bought tickets. I called two camera guys. I called one camera guy. He got another camera guy. They said, I think you might need two cameras. Oh, okay, well, that sound good. Yeah. And y'all got audio? Yeah. Okay. Send them with her. Meet her at the airport.
Okay.
At the tickets and stuff. Thank God you can get tickets pretty quickly to Boston. Mm-hmm. And I sent her, and I want to say Bobby and them picked them up from the airport.
Wow.
And they said, and it was funny because she said, you realize you're sending me to Boston to be with Bobby Brown, who we don't really know.
Right.
And I said, well, it's going to be fine. And she's looking at me like, girl, something happens to me. I'm like, oh my God. So she got on the plane, went there. She calls me and she said, oh, I don't know. And I know what she said. What are we actually filming? And I said, whatever he does.
Okay.
Just film whatever he does. I said, I saw this special about the real world. And they said that they shoot with the people for 2 weeks called exploratory.
Okay. Just to see.
So just do that. Let's just start there. And she said, okay. I said, so you just tell the camera people to just continue to follow him, make sure he has good sound, and that's it. Okay, no problem. And then she said, once she got there, she said, well, I want to tell you something. I said, what? She was like, he nice. I said, oh, he is? She was like, yeah, he's not really bad like they say. And I said, okay, well, just keep filming. Let's just see what happens. And that night, I went home and I watched a movie called Being John Malkovich.
Okay.
And then I woke the next day, I said, hey, I think we should call it Being Bobby Brown. And she was like, oh, okay, well, that sounds good. What you mean by that? Like we gonna see who he is or something? And I said, yeah. Like the movie, the guy, you got to see all the pieces of him. And she was like, oh, so we're going to show him as a dad. Because she was like, I see, we shot with him with his kids. It's so sweet. And she was telling me stuff. And I was like, yeah. So she was like, she was like, yeah. So it's sort of like we figure out Bobby Brown's why. And she'd be like, that makes sense. Because people like him. His mama like him. Daddy like him. Brother like him. Whitney must like him. Yeah, that's great. This makes sense. So we're like, putting it on.
You're just piecemealing it, yeah.
And honestly, they came back a few days later, and I'll make it shorter. And the attorneys were just like, "Is it working?" And we're like, "Yeah." And then I had found out through a friend that they like to stay at a certain hotel.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, if I let him out of my sight before I can really talk to him, but still I haven't physically met him at all.
Okay.
I said, okay, so I need to get him someplace, at least so I can talk to him for a minute before he goes home to be with his wife. Because remember, he had been in jail. So Whitney has not seen Bobby in months. So I said, how about I got you the penthouse that you like at the Grand Hyatt? And he said, cool. And I said, and we have a car picking you up. And they'll come with you and I'll meet you.
This is a gamble. I'm here for it though, like, but this is a gamble because it could have gone,
We don't even know who you sell it. How does that work? And he said, cool. And he went to the hotel. He met me there. And then he's like, okay, so you Tracey? And I was like, yes, I'm Tracey. You're Bobby. Nice to meet you, Bobby Brown. Wax. And then I said, oh, I have a name. And he's like, what's that? And I was like, Bean Bobby Brown. And he said, okay, Triple B. That used to be my label. Cool. That's good. That's good. That's this.
We love a good alliteration.
And then Whitney called and said, where are you? I could hear her through the phone. I'm thinking, that sounds like Whitney. And he said, I'm at this hotel with my producers. And she said, you're what? And he goes, you know, I told you I'm going to do me a reality show. And she was like, you're doing what? You're not doing a television.
Oh, my God.
Where are you? He's like, I'm at the spot. And she was like, I'm on my way. So
what in the fever dream?
I was flying down there, I guess, in her Porsche. And the people called downstairs and said, Mr. Brown, Miss Houston's here. Send her up. And we're like frozen, like, oh God, Whitney Houston's coming up here. What are we going to do? So we basically like, okay, let's just get out the room.
Okay.
So we wait in the hallway by the elevator. And basically she comes off the elevator with her hair in a bandana or something and a T-shirt and some jeans with her daughter. And we all step aside. Like, you know, it's Whitney.
Right, it's Whitney Houston.
And she said, hello. And we said, hi. And she said, I'm Whitney. And I'm like, ma'am, Whitney Houston, by the way. Put the Houston on that. And she said, who are y'all? And we were like, we're the producers. And she said, well, what are y'all doing out here? And we said, well, we want to give you some privacy. She was like, well, no, come on. So we looked at the camera guys and said, go. And then basically from there, we're making a show with Bobby and Whitney.
Wow. So in total, like, this is it over weeks time?
Then it started from there, and it was like we shot with them over like almost 4 months.
Okay.
And we had, and we also had to call the investor and say, hey, so this is what's happening. We're making a show with them. And you know that money you said just going to give us over the next year or two? We're going to need all that up front.
Okay.
And then we were talking to the lawyers and piecing how it's going to work. And, you know, I was flying back and forth to California to pitch it to different networks and stuff.
Right.
And boiled it down to the understanding that we really wanted to have control over the footage. And really be able to tell the story the way we wanted to tell it.
Okay.
So that's how we sort of landed at a Bravo, because they were definitely, they needed a show and we needed a network that was going to give us some freedom.
Love that.
And so we made a deal with them to license the show to them for a period of time.
I know that like with your work, you've been able to, people who have a guard kind of show them in their most authentic self and foster an environment where like they feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So you've been able to work with people who are like notoriously known for having a guard up sometimes. And you're able to create an area for them to like tell their story very authentically. And obviously they feel comfortable. So like, how do you even do that?
Honestly, I think, and I learned this through a life coach. I think what I do is I connect with people on a very human level. And I think people see, like, they have to feel that energy, like, oh, she's a genuine person. Like, I don't think any Hollywood producer could have got Bobby and Whitney to do that show because there would not have been a trust factor. Like they literally were like, they was like, what can these two girls do to us? To be honest,
Right.
I mean, and probably Whitney felt more like they're like, what could they do? Who
Okay.
are they? They don't even have big lawyers, like, you know? So it was probably was like that scenario that made them just get comfortable and feel not judged.
Yeah.
You know, but feel like we're having fun with them. We're laughing at your jokes. We're eating Bobby's cooking, which probably made me gain weight. And just being with them, like, genuineness, culturally, like,
Right.
think about it from a cultural perspective, like, think about you be around some people who, like, really understand you culturally.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
You're
saying?
comfortable.
Like,
Family. It's like you're my cousin.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. You know, because I grew up that way. Like, my grandmother lived in the hood.
Okay.
My family, my mother, we lived in the suburbs. But basically, I spent my weekends at my grandmother's. Like, you want to fight? I got a frozen. Like, what? My grandmama gonna come down here because you and your mama out. And then I go back home to this environment of everyone behave yourselves, Black Negro College League, debutantes, blah, blah, blah. So the week was spent that way and in a very, very, very vanilla environment
Right.
at school, you know, and everything, because I was like an honor student and all these things.
Right.
So I lived that space, church,
Mm-hmm.
couldn't even listen to secular music in my home
Okay.
and things like that. But then go to my grandmother's house, put on my jeans, and, you know, so then but that gives you this ability to be like, oh, there are all kinds of people in the world.
Right.
And you just have to you just figure out what it is.
Right.
I mean, and some people call it code switching, but it really is connecting humanly to people.
Okay.
And just saying like, oh, okay, I subscribe to this too as a producer. You have something in common with everyone.
Yeah.
I worked on a show in Alaska.
Okay.
We had white people who had never seen Black people before. And I was like, listen to them for 10 minutes and go, oh, military. Yeah, my stepdad's in the military too.
Yeah.
Oh, your mama, da-da-da. Girl, my mama, da-da-da. It's like when we're all human race.
True.
We all actually have something in common. We just need a second. You know what I'm saying? Like, even we all have something in common with Donald Trump because we all have special needs people in our family.
I'm screaming eternally. Oh my goodness. I was like, where are we going with this? I'm like, I don't want to break, but I'm very much like we do. Like, I'm not.
So I raised a dyslexic child. I understand.
I'm dead, Miss Tracey.
Exactly.
That is going to live rent-free in my mind. I'm so glad it's on film because it's going to live rent-free in my mind. Oh my goodness. I think that is an amazing quality to have. And I resonate so hard with, you know, so I've always told people like, oh, I lived like hood adjacent, you know, and, you know, obviously like I'm an Afro-Latina, but I always grew up, well, the first part of my life, I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. But then we moved. My parents got divorced and I was around all Black people. And it was the greatest thing that could have happened to me ever in this life. Sam, because my parents are from a different country, they don't resonate with the Black community. And I tell them like, hey, we are very blessed to be part of two marginalized groups.
Yes.
You know, so I feel like I move better in the Black community anyways than I do with the Hispanic people. I'm like, listen, I might eat rice and beans and do a salsa real quick, but you know, I'm over here. So I get what you mean. And I understand what you're saying. It's not necessarily code switching because it's human.
Yes.
So I resonate really, really hard with that. Miss Tracey, I have something to ask you because I read it and I was like, this is crazy. You play piano?
No.
You don't play piano?
No, I don't know
Okay.
what that was. I'm like, what? I wish.
I thought you played piano. I was like, I was reading on you, of course.
Okay, yeah.
But it said that it must be another Tracey Baker Simmons. Now I feel foolish for asking.
Yeah, no worries. I don't.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
My niece does. It's interesting because my brother and my sister, their kids are so musically gifted. And I'm like, where did this come from? Because that's not us. I mean, I don't even know if most of my mother's children can't even dance.
I'm screaming. Wait, what?
But my niece one of my nieces is an amazing singer, and she's just blowing up with her, working with her gifts and talents and stuff. And then my other niece, like I'll show you a video later, and she plays, and you are like, is that someone playing that piano?
Right.
It's crazy. I'm like, where did these kids get this from? But yeah, it's just
Okay,
this.
so you don't play the.
I don't.
I was like, wow, this is so out of left
I don't
field.
play any instruments, but if Andre can play the flute, I think I could too. But
They said he's
he's
all
learning.
right. Yeah, they said he's all right. My husband actually is a big fan of Andre 3000, and he was like, I'm gonna go and listen to the album.
To the flute album.
Yes, he was thoroughly pissed. He was just like, he needs to rap again. Like, what is this? Like, what?
He's just creative. He's just trying.
And I think that like people should have different mediums, but yeah, that one I was like, that's so random. Like I don't see her playing piano, but whatever.
Okay.
I have a question. You mentioned your mom a lot, and I know that I saw that somewhere your mom said that nothing is worth having without sacrifice. I think it was the quote. And so my question is what sacrifices have proven most worthwhile to you on this journey? And what are some that you feel like you wish you hadn't made?
Yeah. I think, oh, Jesus, I'm trying to think like what would be like major sacrifices. I mean, my mom was very, and my mom passed like
I'm
was
sorry.
years ago. But my mother it's so interesting. My mom didn't graduate high school. I think she only went through like 6th grade or 8th grade or something.
Okay.
But got her GED, went with me. Like I sort of helped her study.
That's awesome.
When she was a bus driver, and she just like, I watched her like, and I think I learned from her, like, everything you have is for your kids kind of thing. And I don't know if that's great or not, but I remember one time asking her like, when was the last time you got a new dress or some shoes? And she said, I don't need that. I got to make sure you guys are good. And it had been like years. Like I literally realized, like it just had came to me like, wait a minute, we getting school clothes again. I don't even think she had bought a new dress.
Wow.
So I just think that was part of it. Just like, and I don't know if I don't know if I give a lot to my kid. I was blessed not to have to sacrifice as much, but I will give my last, But I do feel like the more sacrifice came from my mother just doing everything that she possibly could to come from whence she came to be a person who had 5 college graduates who, went on to build, great lives for themselves and their families. And I just feel like, and it's funny because it wasn't even like I grew up in a household where I was going to be this thing, like a producer. I didn't even know what that was. We barely watched television growing up. I remember Fat Albert. Like when people talk about other commercials, I'm like cartoons and stuff. I'm like, I don't know if I watched that. I watched All in the Family and the Jeffersons.
Yes.
But, Purple Rain was the first movie I ever saw in the theater.
Really?
Yeah. And I was basically a high school senior by then or junior or something like that because that wasn't our thing. But honestly, the biggest thing is faith in my life, in my family. Like it's about just being like, and my grandmother was definitely, I think I just come from a family of generational people. Like my grandmother would like give us everything. Like, okay, what you need? Come on, I'll take you down there to this bank and tell this man whose house I clean that he gonna give you that loan. And she would do it and it would happen,
I love that.
And they had this thing where it's like, don't worry, they're gonna make that call and do that thing. And they weren't people with power, but they had this belief that if they said it, it could happen. And they were trying to really make soft life for us.
Wow. Yeah. At the expense of their own, too, certain things.
Yeah.
I understand that, too, with my family coming from a different country.
Yeah.
My mom's thing was always like, well, I have to get you to a position to get further than where I can go, no matter what it takes.
Yeah.
And I admire that in women. And again, I don't know if it's the right thing or not. I was discussing with someone yesterday about motherhood. I'm coming up on that one day, right?
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, well, either way, you're going to mess up something, I guess. So, like, it might as well be that you're giving up something. But I think I really like the fact that you have, like, this audacious grandmother. And so you're heavily rooted in faith then. Would you say that at any point in your career, you've felt like you've compromised, like, your faith just based on the industry that you're working in? Or, like, how have you had to navigate that?
Yeah.
And they're
I mean, I think, look, I did music videos.
okay.
And I produced Sipping on Syrup. Maybe that's good, maybe it's not.
We don't know.
They did get an Oscar. I'm still reeling in that.
They got an Oscar?
Yes.
For Sipping on
Not for Sipping on Syrup. It was for Whoop That Trick or whatever.
Very other thing.
Yes, see, because they be trying to be funny with them trophies.
Do you know
They say something with them trophies too.
that is? So I have never seen the movie until I met my husband. He's like, you've never seen Hustle and Flow? Like, I don't really think it's that big a deal for me to have not to have seen it. But yeah, no, that's his movie. He loves Terrence Howard.
Yeah.
More so now with all his physics stuff, but I digress. Anyways, we were talking about you.
No. So I do think, I don't know if I felt like I was compromising, but okay, it was like, okay, I first started in the industry working in marketing and promotions.
Okay.
Then transitioned into music videos, producing music videos. And basically, it wasn't, like, at that point, I didn't understand, oh, you could choose. You could say, no, I'm not doing that video for that song.
Got it.
Because it was just, these are the songs, and these are the artists, and this is, and you're a producer,
Right.
this is your director, and these are the jobs, right? So I would say during that period, I remember when I first started out, because I started out as a producer.
Okay.
Somebody said, hey, you could be a producer, and I said, oh, really, what they do?
Okay.
And then I read and got a book real quick.
I'm dead.
Yes, I'm there.
So that's
My husband says it's called autodidactic, which means you can teach yourself things.
okay.
So basically, it's natural for me to just figure out how to make the reality show, because I just like, oh, let me just look and see. Oh, this how you do it? Okay, let me do it.
That is the trends in your life. Like, you were telling me, okay, producer, we don't really watch a lot of TV, but that's where your career went.
Yeah.
Reality show.
Yeah.
There was not really that. So this is like a common trend that you're very much like, hey, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But I'm going to figure it out and master it.
Yeah.
So was there any, when you were a kid, like dreaming, like what did you think you were going to do?
So I read a lot of books.
Okay.
Like my mother, my hard part of my life. So I had a very dangerous stepfather in our home. And so my mother drove the bus, and she was not able, she had younger children. So she needed to make this transition, knowing that at some point she had to get us out of this situation.
Got it.
So one thing she did for me was took me with her on Saturdays instead of leaving me in the home.
Got it.
But I couldn't sit on the bus all day. So she would drop me off at the public library.
Okay.
And I have a photo I could send to you if you want to use it.
Yes.
And I would stay at the library all day on Saturday when it opened at 9 until it closes at 5. My mother's route, she could come back to get me. And the McDonald's was only a block away.
She could just
come back. She would say, at this time, come out so you could get the bus to the McDonald's. Then go there, get your food, go back. And then I circle around and you're going to get it back out. Okay. So I would just roam those shelves and read Shakespeare, J.R.R. Tolkien. I just read books, just sitting on the floor or sitting at a desk. I learned, microfiche, like all these things. So I was just surrounded by words, but that was my safety. That was my safe space for me. So, and then my mother's dream was to be a nurse, right? And I love my mom, and I just was like, okay, Mom, don't worry, I'll go to medical school.
Oh.
So when I went to college initially, I was like, okay, I'm a pre-med major. And then when I got there, I was just like, oh wait, I don't really like science like that. I'm just have the ability to pass these tests. Wait a minute.
Right.
And so, but even in high school, I was like the editor of my school paper and things like that. So I like words. I like reading. I like that. The structure of that.
Right.
So I went and I needed to get a job on campus.
Okay.
And so our school had a newspaper that got published every day, Tuesday through Friday.
Okay.
So they said, do you want to work on a newspaper? You can and we pay. And I said, perfect.
Right.
Pay?
Too easy.
Yeah. And so, and back then, the way it worked, because we didn't have the internet and all that stuff, they printed the words and we taped it down.
Okay.
We taped the articles down.
Oh.
Because it came off the typewriter.
So it wasn't,
and then
it's not full
size.
Oh.
No, yeah.
I'm over here like waiting for like, okay, so like you tape them.
Yeah.
What?
So I originally started as the layout and then gradually became an editor.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I remember coming home and saying, I'm going to go into journalism. And my stepdad, so now this is new stepdad.
Okay.
Safe stepdad said, now you're not going to make no money doing that. And I knew like, now I needed some money.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been selling candy in school all my life. I mean, negotiating. I'm taking tests for dudes in college. But I'm like, hold on now. They don't make no money. Let me go back to school and talk to these people. They don't let me try to switch this major. I need to talk to them. And then they said, well, okay, you want to be creative, but you want to make some money. I said, yes. They said, well, you need to go into marketing.
Okay.
Or sales or something.
Right.
And I said, okay. And then we had a lab at school. The only lab that had Apple computers was the accounting lab. And they said, you can't use those computers. They were easy. I could not master the IBM.
Okay.
And I said, well, how can I get in there? And they said, well, you have to be a finance or accounting major. I said, okay. And then I asked the counselor again. They said, well, finance is creative, money.
Okay.
I said, okay, well, just sign me up for that. And so they were like, so you're going to double major? I was like, yeah, I think I can handle that. It's okay. I just need to get in that lab. And I need to have a degree that's going to make me some money.
Right.
Let's do these two things. And I love sports.
Okay.
So then I started doing research and being like, oh, and maybe I could become an agent. And so I was in this the marketing association, and we booked speakers.
Mm-hmm.
And I booked Michael Jordan's agent, and I can't...
Michael Jordan's agent?
Mm-hmm. Well, it was before Michael Jordan became... He was becoming...
Okay.
And
it's still impressive,
yeah,
though.
So we had him come speak. I'll never forget that. I was like, man, we paid this guy... we're paying him $10,000. Come speak at our school.
Wow.
And he came, and I said, hey, I want to become an agent. And he said, well, I think when you graduate, you should go into sales. Mm-hmm. And then maybe later, because to be honest, there are no female agents. It's not the thing. And I was like, what? And at that time, I was dating my son's father.
Okay.
And he was playing in the minor leagues.
Okay.
And then, so I was meeting potential pros.
Right.
In baseball. And one of the guys who we became really close friends, he said, you could be my agent. And I was like so scared. I was like, oh no, I could screw it up and then what?
Right.
Lose all your money. I don't know how this works. And so I deterred from that. And then when I moved to Atlanta, I met a guy who was like, what do you do? And I said marketing and finance. Because literally first I took a job at pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
And I went to the training. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, they said, now you understand, they was talking to all of us, that you have to understand how the drug works. And you're telling the doctor.
Right.
So I asked the guy the next day, I said, let me holler at you for a second.
You're not letting me holler at you.
Now, how this works is I have to have the information, and then I'm telling the doctor. He said, yes. I would say, so if I say something wrong, it could kill someone. Mm-hmm. And he said, yes. And I said, I can't do that. In good conscience. Right. Because I was like, you don't understand. I'm a person who could take a test. Right. And pass a test. So I'm going to out-test you. Right. But I may not know the information after I finish that test. Right. And I just wouldn't be able to live with myself knowing that I really didn't know. Mm-hmm. So I said, I'm going to resign.
Okay. So you pivoted from there.
I pivoted. And the good thing was in college, I had worked as a bartender and, you know, in the restaurant. And one summer I had stayed in Atlanta.
Is that where you met Babyface?
Mm-hmm. Yes, at Houston's with my resume. See, take your resume to work.
You had your resume at work?
Yes, girl. Because I realized I'm strategic because, okay, I lived in Memphis. There was a Houston's. Okay, I worked at Bennigan's, but I really wanted a job at Houston's because they made more money.
Okay.
Went down there. They said, we hire the all-American look. Everybody there had blonde hair and blue eyes.
Oh, Lord.
Remember now, this is the 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said, really? So I went to Atlanta for the summer, and I got a job at Houston's on Lenox Road.
Love that.
I told them I was moving to Atlanta. And they said, oh, great, blah, blah, blah. They hired me, no problem, because I had a good resume.
Right.
From Bennigan's and everything. I was bartending, everything. Then late August, I said, oh, I can't transfer. I got to go back to Tennessee. I knew I was going to do that.
Right. You knew already. You just finessed.
Finessed. And then they said, oh. And I said, can I transfer? And they said, yeah. And I said, oh, okay. They said, we'll call them and let them know.
Oh, too easy. Okay.
Tracey Baker.
Oh, my goodness.
So they transfer me. I get back up there. I go to the place.
Tracey Baker, the name, your name, your name. They have no idea.
My mother did that on purpose.
You know, there's a reason why I'm a Melissa.
Yes. And so I show up and the guy goes, who are you? I was like, I'm Tracey Baker. And he said, I said, yeah, from Atlanta. I'm here to, to get my schedule.
Right.
And they said, oh. And they said, you worked in the front of the house there? I said, yeah. And they said, okay. They put me on the schedule. And then I got my friend a hostess job.
Right. Listen.
Like, open the door, put a stop in it so more folks can come through. And basically, because I was like, I figured it out, like, oh, I bet you if I do it this way.
Right.
Like, I had to backdoor them. And who has the backdoor to get a darn job at a restaurant to wait tables?
Right. That's smart.
And so, basically, when I went back to Atlanta, I went back to work at that Houston's after I decided I wasn't going to do the pharmaceuticals job because it was in the middle of the finance district.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, if I'm waiting tables, I can ask people, hey, who are you? What you do?
Right.
What company you work for? I got my resume. Boom, boom. Because
you probably have some regulars.
We didn't have email. We had to, people had to see the type or you had to mail it to them. I don't know. I can't remember how people got your resume because we didn't have emails.
Right.
And so, yeah, I met LA and Babyface. I had no idea who they were. They talked to me about this company that they had and things like that. And then that's how I got hooked up with a guy, Dale Hill, who was working at Warner Brothers.
Okay.
And then he brought me on to do marketing and promotions.
Got it.
And then basically the director, Keith Ward, who really wanted the connections to the artists, that's how it became. He decided he wanted to utilize my connections with the artists. And I'm obviously smart enough to realize there's value.
Right.
So what would that make me if I introduce you to my people? And he
got it.
My producer. And I was like, well, yeah, that sounds like something. How much they make?
I love how you stumbled into this career.
Yeah.
Like, and I resonate with that too, but I love how you stumbled into this career. I want to know, like, with, you have like 20 plus years under your belt, like in the game. And so
30.
Okay. I was like, is it 20? Is it 25? I know it's more than 20.
Well, the show is 20 years old, but I have like 30 years in entertainment overall.
How do you keep making groundbreaking work? Because, like, as creatives, sometimes the well runs dry.
Yeah.
Like, how do you, when the well starts to run dry, like, what do you?
Yeah. I don't think their well ever runs dry.
Okay.
That's the thing about being creative. Like the one thing, like when Jay-Z said, if you made me make another one, like it's true. It's really like you might feel like that was the last you had, but it wasn't all you had. It's never all you had. You are a creator. You are the soul. it's just going to keep popping up if you just fertilize it, you know? So basically, I don't think you run out of ideas. It's funny because I've shot a video and I didn't post it where I said probably the most painful thing about being a creative is that you have ideas all the time.
This is true.
You have all these ideas and all these things you want to accomplish. And it's painful, especially like when you're in that season where you're not, like you haven't, I would go through these, they call it ebbs and flow, and I'm like, Lord, I want to get to the flow. I just want to be on flow, no ebb, just flow, 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 flow. But basically that's what happens. The ebb is just the fertilizer.
Right.
You gotta water it, you gotta fertilize, you gotta take some breaks, catch your breath, and things like that, or figure out where you need to pivot, what did you do right or wrong, or what would you just do different. It's not right or wrong, it's just lessons.
Right.
And it's hard to like understand that, but the older you get, the more you realize that part of it. But you just don't run out of ideas. We are creative beings built for that. So you don't run out of ideas. You ultimately, we run out of time.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So you got to keep fighting, keep pushing, and just know that like something's going to stick. The thing that is for you or what you were supposed to do is going to stick.
For sure.
So just keep, because honestly, I know people will look at me and they're like, oh, you did being Bobby Brown and you've done this and you've done that. And I sit at home and I'm like, I haven't done a big movie. I haven't done a big series. I haven't, you know what I'm saying? Like you'll spend a lot of times. I'm happy or thankful when I meet people who will remind me of what I have done.
Absolutely.
And like help you sort of be grateful. Like one of my friends one time said, when I was turning 50, and I said to my friend, I just feel like I haven't, this, and I'm in New York, and I haven't done this and that. And she said, do you know how many people wish they had one show on television?
Right.
Wish they had one opportunity to regroup or one, and so it's hard. I wouldn't say it's an easy thing to have this level of gratitude, but in the ebbs, that's when you have to dig into feelings with the gratitude so that you can get back to the flow.
Right. That feeling of existentialism. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. Wow. You should be reminded. You have to know that you are an icon. And even when I met you, I didn't know who you were when I met you. They were like, oh, this is Tracey. And I was like, hi, nice to meet you. But just getting to know you, I was like, wow, this lady is like a boss. Like this lady, you came on the set, you were like, hey, I need you over there. I need this over there. I need this to look like this. Hey, can you? And I'm like, oh, wow. And when I met you, this is such a full circle moment for one. When I met you, I was in one of the hardest points in my life. I didn't have much. I didn't have anything. I was just there like, okay, well, we'll see if maybe this can be something. So I know that you mentioned like there's some stuff that you maybe think about sometimes that like, oh, I wish I had this or that, or I had accomplished this or that. I know that obviously like you've been nominated for an Emmy and, sometimes to people like an award is a measure of success. But how do you measure your success?
Definitely when the award shows come on, you think about that, like, oh, I wish I had this, or someday, or you might even just, you'll see me post a picture and be like, someday I'm going to be on that stage, or, just, can I get an NAACP? Okay. Y'all don't recognize the work I'm out here doing for the culture. But I think, honestly, and I'm older now, so I probably wouldn't have said this 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But as you get older, the measure of success is like how much you're impacting others, how much like people that you can see. I remember one time one of my friends said to me, you know how many people will be at your funeral to say what you did to change their life?
Yeah.
And when he said that, I was like, I'm not worried about that. But now I'm not worried about it because I know I sowed the seeds.
Right.
But I'm happy that honestly, that has started to become my measure of level of success. Like to see people like my really, really good friend, Darren Grant, who I gave his first role of film. And now he's like directing on all of these major shows, billions and this and this and this. And, you know, like just different people career-wise who could say like, oh, you did this or you know, one kid, he's actually coming here. He's like, I'm going to be in New York for 8 hours and I want to see your face. And he's been all over the world as an artist.
Wow.
He like, I met him giving a speech at Clark, and then he saw me again and latched onto me and was my assistant for 5 minutes. And I looked at him and he was drawing, and I said, now, I really love you, but baby, you an artist. You not no assistant. And he said, yeah.
Not you having a full circle moment.
He brought the paper back the next day and showed me his art. And he said, yeah. He was like, but my parents, I think it was like his stepdad or something, told him that he couldn't be an artist. And I said, well, he can't tell you that because that's what you are. You're sitting here worrying about my website and graphics and your drawing. You're not, this is what you are.
Right.
And he said, okay. I said, so be an artist. Matter of fact, I'm going to pay you to do my website, and I'm actually going to refer you to some other people.
Wow.
And basically that pushed him. And now he's been all over the world. Then Italy, he was in Dubai, he's back and forth, California, Miami, all over the world. And literally, it was simple as me saying, you should be this.
Right.
Not even like, hey, I think this is a good idea, but it really was to be like,
no, you are.
Hey, this is what you are. I can see that. And that I do feel like that's one of my gifts too.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the industry, working with people, I could see them. Like when Darren said, like I said, I want to be a director. You saw that in me.
Right.
And said, oh yeah, here you go. And then, hey, why don't you direct this video? Not knowing if he could or not, but just like, if you feel it, you probably can do it, you know?
I feel like people too, if they are put in that position, will rise to the occasion. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's what you need, is you need someone to light that fire under your eyes. So like, for lack of better words, but yeah. I don't know. I'm going to break the fourth wall real quick. How are we?
So you're at 105 right now.
Okay.
1 hour.
So I know I have to, because the studio where this is it.
It's 2:45.
It's 2:45?
Oh, okay. So we got to stop.
I mean, no rush on my.
I don't remember. Lami, how long did I rent this studio for? Till 2 or till 3? Till 3. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, I was like having a mini panic attack. I'm like,
oh, okay. I'm gonna stop being long-winded.
No, please don't. I'm enjoying every story. I'm like, I've looked at my cards, like, these cards were to guide me a little bit in case I ran out of things, but I've actually been way more interested in what you're talking about rather than these strict guidelines I was trying to give myself. And honestly, like, I literally only have like one question left on it. It's not like, so I don't remember what we're talking about. What we can pick up the influence that you've had.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to drink some water.
Okay.
Let's just pause.
Okay.
Sorry. Eric is.
Thank
Brian.
thank you.
I know when you teared up, I was like, oh my God.
I know. I was like, pull it in.
When you pulled it back, I was impressed. Like, I didn't even have time to react because I'm like, I was going to start crying.
Getting yourself back.
I'm like, she put the tears away.
Yes.
I go with no tissue because I'm like,
I gotta become an actress now.
That's going to be next on her list. She's going to be like, listen.
Girl, Tony very well.
Oh my God, no. So, yeah.
3, 2.
I know we talk a lot about like dreams. Like, do you have any dreams left? I'm making it sound like, but like,
any dreams?
Because I feel like you've done so much, but like, what is a dream like project for you that you would want to do? Like, if you had to put it together.
Oh, Jesus. A dream project.
Yes.
I have too many dream projects. So,
okay.
And I'm actually working on one that I can't even say, but it's a biopic.
Okay, love those.
And it's a famous person.
Okay.
That in the music space.
Okay.
I could say that. I'm like, well, I just gotta get all the paperwork done. So I'm like, don't say it. And it's funny because a person said to me, it was actually someone else. They were like, okay, this is my dream project, but there was a person who didn't produce, right?
Okay.
And I said, oh, okay, you know the people, and she's like, yeah, they're my friends. And I said, oh, shoot, let's get them on the phone.
That dream happened.
And so. And I was like, wait, so no one's ever done a biopic on this person? It's a man, it's a person. And literally no one's ever done a biopic on him. And they said, well, because it's kind of been weird. People want to talk about the ugly, this, that, and the other.
Okay.
And I was like, so why can't we just talk about the human? And she was like, oh my God, I think they'll love that. And basically, and it wasn't even until I got on the phone with the family that I said, no, you don't understand. This will be my legacy.
Yeah.
And they were like, whoa. I'm like, no, for real. Like, you know, so I was like, listen, they're doing biopics, Johnny Cash and, you know, all these other people. This man deserves a biopic.
Right.
And so I would say like that, I'm almost, it's like, you know how they say if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough.
Right.
And this was like, this is kind of scary. Like, for real? Then I'm like, well, God, I guess you got it. So let's do this.
The universe doesn't have a budget.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so I would say, I like all forms of storytelling.
Okay.
I do like biopics. I like documentaries. Like, once I was able to do one and really be a part of show running one, I was like, oh, I love this process. Because guess what? You get to do research. You're reading. You're breaking
all the things you love.
Breaking story down. Exactly. So I love all of that. And then I do love scripted television.
Okay.
And even in that space, I'm working with a friend who's an author who does like romance and stuff. And I'm working with her, and she has projects that are happening, and she's allowing me to be a part, like sort of be her little, sidekick.
Okay.
Like, because she's the big dog, because she has the IP and everything, but also just being a part of that process. And so for me, really, the real dream, to be very, very honest, remember, I love studios in Hollywood.
Just me.
And there's a studio being built in New Jersey, and it's 1888. That's the name of the studio, which is actually the birth of film. That's the date. That's the significance of that. However, for me, my mother was born November 18th, right? She died August 18th. So that number is like a part of my GNO code now, right? And honestly, I'm always, and those people are going to freak out if they see this, but I look at their little, because it's being built, right?
Okay.
And I'm like, right here, this row will belong to us.
Mm-hmm.
Young Black creators, to have our own little Harlem Row, if you would.
Okay.
On this lot, where we get to create, telling our stories in this space, in this state, New Jersey, which is the birth of film, on a studio that is named after the birth of film. And I am the person that helps to navigate getting us in this space, the financing we need for the projects, and being able to protect the story, where we don't have to lose ourselves to tell the stories, and that they represent us properly.
I hope they watch it. I hope they watch this podcast to find that. No, that's amazing. I have, speaking of Harlem, that you just mentioned it. I just remembered your, it was the Conversations.
Yeah, the Conversations project.
Yes, which it was a reimagine of like the Harlem. Like, tell me about that. Like,
so it actually will stem from these guys sort of were trying to do this show about athletes and wine, to be honest.
Okay.
That turned into them having a conversation when they shot the pilot. I was like, oh, okay, this is what it'd be about. And they were like, yeah, can you help us out with this? Sure.
Okay.
And then then it morphed into, should it be a roundtable discussion and how does that work?
Okay.
And I sort of came in to participate in figuring out what the topic should be, bringing in the story team and sort of layering what are the things that matter to the culture.
Right.
That these conversations could be centered around. And I'm actually in episode 2. I'm at that table. But basically that really was how it morphed into that thing. And then we just sort of built it around that, and they allowing me to spearhead what the conversations and topics would be about.
Nice.
And sort of how they laid out story-wise, and even on the poster and everything. I love that project. I wish more people would discover it. I think it would give people comfort, like, especially now, to just hear those conversations, because the topics are, like, they're very evergreen.
Right.
Which we purposely did that. So it does talk about critical race theory, the N-word, like so many things that are always topic in the community. So, but yeah, that project, that gave me joy too. It's like, I think like that was a bit of a turning point for me. Doing that, doing Hip Hop Treasures, where I had to direct, and it wasn't even like I asked. They said, "Oh, you're gonna direct the scenes with LL and Ice-T," and I was like, "Who called me? Who said I was a direct?" Oh yeah, now I'm a director. Let me go ahead and try to figure.
You always wear the hats. Like,
I was like, "Oh, okay. I think I understand how this works." And
wow.
morphing myself, literally in the middle of the project, my mother passed. That 2 days before the first shoot with LL. And but I was like, I need this distraction because right now there's nothing I could do.
Right.
But wait to figure out when we're burying her and all those things. So I just, dug into that. And then doing we did this documentary with Showtime that hasn't aired yet, but called Women in Hip Hop. And that literally, I think that really gave me this headspace of thinking, oh, I could really like produce content that shares these rich stories that I care about, and they can still be viable.
Right.
And it doesn't always have to be some reality show with people being nuts, know? And just being able to like relook at being Bobby Brown and say, oh, this was two humans being human. And like connecting with themselves in that way. Right. And then now, 20 years later, even 10 years ago, finding an audience that culturally understood and appreciated it, which is also the power of this media. Yeah. That like sometimes people might not get it at first. Right. And then they get into this space where they are able to appreciate it. So just give them time sometimes,
I agree, because I remember in real time when that reality show came out, but I was a kid. I was probably like, I'm not going to tell you, I was a kid. I thought about it. I was like, wait. Yeah. And so I can remember when it came out, and I can remember my parents having opinions like, well, what is, that's not how Whitney Houston is. And why is Bobby Brown like that? And I remember being like, oh, like that's okay. That's different. Yeah. And now that I'm an adult, I'm like, oh, this is lit. Like they were cool. They were beyond,
I was on this thing on Clubhouse, and I told the people, I said, even my own mother said, now, Tracey, why you gotta show Whitney like that? I was like, I can do anything. That is Whitney. Have you been to the grocery store with her? I was like, no, nobody's putting this on me. This is who she is. So
I love the progression of your work. Like I like having this one-on-one with you where you get I now know your story more.
I appreciate it.
In the progression, and you just stumbling into things and just learning as you go. I like where it's led you to, right? So it's led you to a point where now you're doing the teaching and you're desensitizing, not even desensitizing, you're kind of like uncovering the veil of like something that was hidden in the industry, just things in general that people didn't know about, like, and that must be rewarding also.
Yeah, of course.
So I mean, what's next? Because I feel like you're always onto something next, like.
Oh God, I mean, honestly, what's next is like, actually, I am going to do a podcast on my own called TV Decoded.
Yeah.
and really get into explaining the industry.
Okay.
It's really helping people understand. So that's one thing. But also, like I said, developing biopics. I have a documentary that I'm developing called Medical Apartheid. I lost my sister last year due to medical malpractice.
Wow, I'm sorry.
And it really, I want to pay homage to her by like really digging into why we don't trust the system but in a way of figuring out how we can fix it.
Right.
And like, let's come up with a resolution in the last episode. So we're doing a doc series of that. I'm paying homage to my mother by doing another podcast with a friend of mine called Twice a Child, Caregiving Chronicles. Because we all finding ourselves now in this space in life where a lot of people are like taking care of their kids, but having to take care of their parents and what that looks and feels like, but the challenges, but the joy too. Like, like my mother had a terminal illness, which was painful, but it was beautiful because then it sort of like made me aware there was a clock ticking.
Right.
And so I needed to be present. Completely present, making sure I was like, I said, I love you enough.
Right.
I know you love me. And, just
Yeah.
all of those things. We don't always get the blessing of being able to wrap it up because my sister died suddenly or my mother passed over a period of 18 months. So I got to really hold her and say goodbye.
Right.
So basically just sort of digging into that and hopefully like letting it become a resource and healing. So those are the kind of things that I'm doing. Like I help my friend and I'm doing a podcast called Innings of Life.
Yeah.
And honestly, Innings of Life, the podcast is just legends and current baseball players sort of mapping out their life based on innings. But also I am utilizing that to also do a backdoor documentary, sharing stories of legends, baseball players whose stories people probably would never know or forgot, but making sure that they exist. Because I do feel strongly about that. Like you could take whatever you want to take out of history books and whatever. And if you don't want your dumb kids to know what happened, what I want is for our kids, like I look at my life and think like if I didn't have my grandmother who told me stories about, she had this pride of I can read and write and I never picked cotton. And I'm like, oh, you all the way from Georgia, girl. I heard that. Okay, shoot, all right.
Let me dust it off my shoulders.
Say, this is what we doing. But just having those roots and knowing like there's a generation of kids who don't really have that.
Yeah.
But like saying, okay, but there's still some stories here that we need to make sure get documented so these kids can, I watched some kids watch when they redid Roots. I was at a screening in Brooklyn and the kids were crying, were high school students, and they said, we didn't know. What? So yeah. So I'm really digging into how that works for me.
I've noticed that you we're almost at time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Last thing.
Okay.
I noticed that you experience loss, but then you put it right back in your work. Is that something that you've always
I think I just decided I had to do it like it happened to me. And once again, it's like, oh, what do you do with this?
Right.
How do you say, I still love you? So that's, well, because I do feel like things happen. People be like, oh, that happened to me. But it's sort of like, I will look at things and be like, why did this happen? Like, what does God want me to do with this? Why did he allow this to happen to me? It's always like there's a purpose. So what do I use this for? Or what does he want me to do? Like, okay, if you didn't suffer, if you didn't have someone from medical malpractice, would you really care about doing a documentary on apartheid?
Right.
If you didn't have this, would you really care about helping people figure that out?
Right.
So everything is, nothing is ever lost. I do say that. God can use anything, and he does. And basically, it's really just asking, what do I do with this? Why do you want me to experience this? What did you want me to do with this? Even if it's just to share a testimony and help someone else get through it and not fall apart.
That's why we're here. I always tell people your life can be someone's survival guide. But Tracey, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
From the bottom of my heart. This means the absolute world to me.
I appreciate it.
And I think with that, I'm going to have you, if you have anything to say to the camera, you can give me your spiel. You can tell them where to find you. all the good stuff.
Okay, I'm on all socials at T Baker Simmons, and I have my website tvdecoder.tv and my own personal website traceybakersimmons.com. But for the most part, like Instagram, I'm on the new app Spill, and any of the other Substacks and all of those special places because I'm not on Twitter anymore. Don't drive a Tesla, and I'm not on Twitter. And you too should leave. But basically, yeah, from that perspective, and I'm very receptive to checking my DMs and just connecting with people because that's what I do. So